Hello again. I dare say that viewers know that I am routinely described in some quarters as promoting fascism. Indeed, it is even suggested that I am myself a fascist. This is amusing, but it also has a serious side. For the last 80 or 90 years, left-wing folk have described anybody whose views differ from their own too radically as being fascists. There might, I suppose, have been some excuse for this in the 1930s, at which time there were actually fascist parties and indeed 2 or 3 European countries with fascist governments. But those days are long past. It might have been reasonable in 1936 to talk about the struggle between fascism and the progressive forces of mankind, but these days it just sounds silly. What makes it especially ridiculous is that those young people busily condemning people like me as fascists do not even have any coherent idea of what they actually mean by the word. I thought it might be interesting to see what fascism actually is, and then we might be able to ask ourselves what the chances are that we are likely to encounter a fascist in Europe in the modern world. Let's take a definition from a popular book on historical and political ideas and see how we get on. I chose this book from the Teach Yourself series because it gives succinct and easily understood definitions. Viewers might, of course, consult books of their own where they will find similar descriptions of what it actually means to be a fascist. I'm looking at this definition primarily to see to what extent it matches up with me and my political views. So the question I'm addressing is, am I a fascist and am I expounding fascist ideology on this channel? Let's see. Well, historians use the term fascist to label groups, movements and regimes share extreme right-wing values and policies. Generally speaking, now referring to those movements which came to power in the 1920s and 30s. Okay, that is an historical curiosity. Nobody is seriously suggesting that I'm a follower of Mussolini in 1930s Italy, are they? So to that extent, we can disregard the proper fascist parties that arose in Europe at that time. Right, let's go through the rest of the definition. And bear in mind that we still see people being called fascist, including me, in the modern world. Fascist doctrine is centered on a belief in the greatness of the nation, the need for leadership and authority in government, and the sublimation of the individual to the greater needs of the fascist party and the patriotic community that it represents. As well as these broadly totalitarian attitudes towards government and society, fascism is reliant on several highly negative stances. For instance, consistently it is anti-liberal, anti-egalitarian, anti-capitalist, and anti-communist. Fascism is also likely to be anti-Semitic. Well, let's just stop and think about that for a moment. The idea of the individual and the needs of the individual being sublimated to the community as a whole, I find absolutely abhorrent. To me, the individual and the family is the most important thing. They're far more important than any political party, certainly more important than any state or any need of the state. To that extent, I don't think I am absolutely opposed to the idea of fascism. So, I'm a great one for individuals and individualism. To that extent, I don't at all fit, and nor do any of the people really that one sees being described as fascist today fit that definition. What about this? Anti-liberal and anti-egalitarian. Anti-liberal. Let's see. Am I opposed to the idea of respecting or accepting behaviour or opinions different from my own? I think so. Am I open to new ideas? Certainly. Do I wish to promote individual rights, civil liberties, democracy and free enterprise? Yes to all those things, of course. Anti-liberal indeed. I'm actually a old-fashioned liberal in the 19th century mould, but never mind. Okay, the idea that I'm anti-liberal is absolutely preposterous. What about anti-egalitarian? These, by the way, are the absolutely vital qualities that a fascist or follower of a fascist party should have. These are not fringe things. These are absolutely crucial to the definition of fascism. Egalitarianism. That's the principle that all people are equal and deserve equal rights and opportunities. Far from being opposed to this, I regard it as the foundation stone of a just society. Has anybody watching my videos ever heard me advocate a position that is opposed to this idea? In other words, have I ever said that all people shouldn't be treated equally and given equal rights and opportunities? It is absurd to suggest such a thing. What about anti-Semitism? Has anybody noticed my being anti-Semitic at all? I seriously wouldn't have thought so. I'm sometimes criticised for the opposite view. There is a sentence at the end of this definition which explains what is really going on with all these accusations of fascism. It reads as follows. Since 1945, the term has been used as a political insult. In particular, communists try to discredit their opponents by identifying them as fascist. I would be interested to see if any of those who have in the past accused me of fascism can come up with any way in which I actually demonstrate that I am a fascist, or that I hold fascist opinions, or that I propagate fascist ideas, at least according to any widely recognised definition of the world. This kind of thing might have worked well enough in the years leading up to the Second World War, but it's a tactic which is now well past its sell-by date.